we will discuss Chapter 5 of Shinzo Hayase's work. The chapter is entitled Social Transformation in Davao, Formation of a Frontier.
The Bagobo society before the formation of the Frontier Society lives in the slopes around Mount Apo, and there are three linguistic groups among the Bagobo who could not communicate with each other. They are Tagabawa, Klata, and Obo. This is the map of the distribution of the three language groups of the Bagobo. The Tagabawa lives south of Lipadas River, north of the Matanao River, east of the Balatucan River, and south of the Saging River. The Klata lives in the south of Talomo River, north of the Lipadas River, and the west of Davao River. And the Obo lives in south of Suawan River, north of Talomo River, and over the Apo mountain range up to Matalam village. The Bagobo society before was formed after Cebuano came to be spoken by the population. Their social unit was made by blood or by marriage. They practiced the slash and burn agriculture. Their staple food was rice, corn, potatoes, which are supplemented by what they hunted and gathered in the forest. The rivers and ravines were considered as village boundaries, and trees, rocks, and other geographical obstacles and natural formation were used as landmarks. The Banad is what they called the formed community, which was comprised of several to some 10 households, and it is led by the Datu. Thus, the power of Datu was absolute. The male Bagobo is called Magani or Bahani, and a male Bagobo is adult if he had killed a person. This tradition makes the Bagobo society a warrior society. They also have a term for a slave class, which is called the Uripon. A fact is the Bagobos believed that spirits resided in natural objects such as big trees and rocks. They have a term for a shaman, which is called the Mabalian. They also practice a human sacrifice, which is practiced after harvest, famine. If there's natural resource disasters, if the Datu died, or to show Datu's leadership or Magani's bravery. They offered the Matigsaugata people or the useless slaves. Here I will narrate a record of a Klata Bagobo by the name Munkay Betel, a son of the Datu of Tomayong settlement, who was born around 1930. He vividly remembered how human sacrifice was performed and left the following record. Here I will narrate it now. One of the pagan practices which I considered the worst and very bad before God was the human sacrifice. It is still fresh in my mind when one time I witnessed this practice of human sacrifice. A slave girl, 5 years old maybe, who was very sickly and very thin, was to be offered for sacrifice. My father and I, with a group of people, took the slave girl to the forest early in the morning. When we reached the designated place, my father offered a word of prayer to our god Diwata, asking him to bless the sacrifice. After the prayer, my father gave a spear to three persons holding it with its point towards my father. Then my father held the slave girl by her armpit and swung her towards the point of the spear held by the 3 persons. And how the spear pierced the stomach of the girl. And then my father laid her down and pulled his sharp bolo from its sheath and cut the girl right on her abdomen, which divided her into two. After that, all the people present began to cut the victim into small pieces. My father gave his bolo to me and told me to cut also, and I did. They also practice barter trade, and what they trade are gong, slaves, horses, cows, cloth woven from Abaca, and sometimes marriages beyond the bonded often took place during the barter trade. They practice matrilocal, in which after the marriage, the husband lived in his wife's birthplace and learned her language. They also have a term for the mestizo, but this is not unlike what we know that the mestizo have are half Filipino, half Spanish. Their term for mestizo is the children who learn both languages. The Bagobo did not have attachment to one particular place. They often leave a place and they don't settle just for one place. They have the sense of belonging for the Bagobo because they believe that as long as you're a Bagobo, you cannot be a slave. We will proceed to the social impact of outsiders. First is the influence of Muslim. The Bagobo society was under the Maguindanao Sultan in 1645, but only villages along the coast was under the control of the Maguindanao Sultan. In 19th century, ships of the European powers started to visit Mindanao and the Sulu Islands, which were not fully reached by the Spanish colonial power, for military expeditions, and Sulu and Maguindanao during that time lost power when the slave trade lost its supply line from the Visayas. By the mid-19th century, the Sarangani Bay became the center of the slave trade. Then various tribes of Mindanao became the source of supply for the slave trade. Then some Muslim whose slave trade activities has been curtailed left their birthplaces and moved somewhere elsewhere. And some of them usually moved to mountains. Datu Bagu was said to be from Sulu. He controlled Davao Gulf region during mid-19th century, and he had built forts equipped with cannon at the mouths of two rivers, the Davao River and the Tagal. Under his control were the Muslim resided near the rivers of Mount Davao Gulf, such as Lupon, Iho, Tagum, Inawayan, and Padada. He had gathered 400 fighting men, and he barter trade with the Tagabawa Bagobo and introduced a new culture to the Bagobo. However, um, it was not strong enough to change the culture of the Bagobo because the Bagobo who had been victims of slave hunting took strict precautions against the Muslims. This is the map where Datu Bagu had control during his time. Let's move on to the influence of the Spaniards. The Spanish colonial government was not interested first in Davao, but by the 19th century they had took interest in Davao for its forest products. In 1834, the ship named San Rufo came in Davao for the biao or beeswax. It was said that they had a letter written by the Sultan of Maguindanao, but it was attacked by Datu Ongay, who was the follower of Datu Bagu. This led to the dispute between Spanish colonial government and the Maguindanao's Sultan over the ruling rights of Davao. But uh, by the start of 1845, the Sultan of Maguindanao abandoned the ruling rights of Davao Gulf and Sarangani Bay. Governor Narciso Claveria y Saldua conferred the governorship of Davao on Jose Oyangren for the next 10 years and followed him and allowed him to monopolize the trade in Davao Gulf for the 6. And Jose Oyangren organized an expedition in Davao. He annihilated the Muslims at the mouth of Davao River, but the trade in Davao did not increase as what he expected. And the main trade items of Davao was armasiga or resin and beeswax. He was accompanied by missionaries or the recollects to to build churches and for the conversions of the people in Davao. However, they only were able to baptize on the average of 55 persons per year. The Jesuits. In 1768 they were prohibited to go to the Philippines, but in the start of 1859 they worked mainly in Mindanao, and they have 100 converts until 1892. And Father Saturnino Orios, uh, during his time, the missionary work became active in Mindanao, and only after the Jesuits started their missionary work, the tribes in Davao started to convert to Christianity. And in 1870, they marks the first Bagobo conversion. The knowledge of the Spanish colonial government on the whole population was limited to the coastal area and was mainly on the Tagabawa Bagobo. The contact between the Bagobo and the Spaniards was only made through missionaries. Some Bagobo who were afraid of the Spaniards fled to the mountains, and the Spanish influence on the whole Bagobo population was limited to the coastal area, and the colonial policies such as collecting taxes was not fully implemented. Several Bagobo learned to obtain new industrial products through barter trade by bringing resin and beeswax to the lowland merchants. Some Christianized Bagobo received education in schools which were opened by the missionaries. And by the 1890s, there was a start of abaca and coconut plantation, and this is when the contact with modern civilization started in Bagobo.
Moving on to the influence of the Americans. On December 20, 1899, the U.S. advanced to Davao led by Captain James L. Birchfield. Upon arrival, according to the account, he saw a vast fertile land, which led him to buy 110 hectares of land and manage a plantation. Abaca became an integral part of Davao economy after abaca became two-thirds of the whole Philippine export. Davao began paying attention to its cultivation. Eventually, a governor was installed. General Leonard Wood became the first governor of the Moro province. He is regarded as the father of Davao. During his tenure, American planters increased. On February 15, 1905, the Davao Planters Association was established. By 1906, membership grew to 60. Laborers were Bagobo, Mandaya, Mansaka, Manobo, Taga-Kaulo, Bilaan, Muslims, Visayans, Pampangans, and Japanese. Most of them were indigenous people from nearby villages, Filipino migrants from north, and Japanese. The main problem that the government faced in Davao is labor shortage. Plantation owners had to rely on the tribal people from around Davao, and they failed to attract Christians from the northern Philippines and foreigners, particularly Italians. First, tribal policy. The main aim of this policy is to civilize through conversion to Christianity and school education. It also encouraged tribal people to become low paid laborers. The American colonial government. The colonial government allowed Spanish Catholic missionaries to remain. Hypocrisy is a huge play here, with the Americans being Protestants and Catholicism serving as a legacy of Spanish colonial period. The Catholic missionaries who remained in Davao imposed forced labor that resulted into churches and built public schools to instill Catholic teachings. These were against the policy of the American colonial government, which is to civilize through Christianization. The main objective of the government is to manage the colony profitably through the promotion of economic development. With Spaniards spreading Christianity, Americans wanted to control education. Initially, the Bagobos did not accept school education for the Americans because the Bagobos believed that Americans gather children to school to sell to the Aragasi, known to devour children, and that female students will be impregnated by the Americans. American school education did not fit the local conditions. On the other hand, Bible and the hymn were translated into the local languages, which made it easier for the locals to associate themselves to Christianity. In summary, American development was limited to the settlement of the lowland Tagabawag Bagobos, and their main influence to the Bagobos were school education and, oddly, spread of Christianity. Next is the influence of the Japanese. The Japanese started a full-scale abaca cultivation with the establishment of the Ota Development Company in 1907 and Fukurawa Plantation Company in 1914. Japanese surplus capital of World War I flowed into Davao, resulting to the establishment of 71 agricultural companies in 1918. In 1921, abaca cultivated land was at 34,280 hectares. With the new Public Land Law of 1919, the Japanese applied in the name of the Bagobo. On paper, they are renters of the Bagobo landlords, but in actuality, they manage the land. By 1930, abaca cultivated land grew to 75,070 hectares. The abaca boom of World War I. Christians, mainly from Cebu, supported by the Bureau of Labor, poured into Davao. Their main difference with the Japanese, they were with their families. In 18, 6,267 migrants arrived in Davao, 799 of which were single males. By 1920s, these migrants returned home, which lowered their number to 4,815 by 1924. But they came back to Davao when abaca price rose again. By 1930s, they settled in Davao and most worked in Japanese abaca plantations. Christian population surpassed non-Christian tribal peoples. The Christian population already have their own families, so they built their own communities, which resulted for them to have hardly any contact with the Bagobo. They also viewed the Bagobo as uncivilized, while the Bagobos viewed Christians as mere hired workers. After the war, Christian Filipinos from the north became the landowners after the Japanese were forcefully repatriated to Japan. Matrimonial union between the Christians and the Bagobo became no longer unusual. Dissemination of school education and Christianity once again were the results.
I will discuss the social changes among the Bagobo. First, the economic changes. First was rainforest became started was converted into abaca plantation. This what they practiced, the slash burn agriculture became after that they searched for another slash burn or a new way of adaptation to the environment. Then um, those who remained in the Banod planted abaca, but what they planted was not enough. Then the fish did not thrive in the river since there were no more trees, and the Bagobo started to eat canned fish from the Japanese and Chinese merchants. And this is when they started to depend on the food outside of their society or community. Those who remained in the Banods were divided into two. First was who accepted Japanese advice and obtained the land by applying homestead or free patent. And the other one is who could not obtain land and started to work in abaca plantation owned by the Japanese. The hierarchy from what they have on the past, the Datu warriors, slaves, it was changed into only two, land owning and non-land owning. But the Bagamba land owners were not totally land owners because they should have Japanese managers as a prerequisite. So the Bagobo warrior society under the Datu was destroyed, and they banned human sacrifice, ritual killings, and weapons. So the formation of the frontier society destroyed the traditional lifestyle of the Bagobo. It made the Bagobo through the market economy, and the abaca industry made by the Japanese and the other foreigners resulted in the loss of existing balance and control over the Banods. The autonomy of the Bagobo society was taken away because there were no guidance into the new lifestyle and made them impossible to connect to Davos progress and forced them to take subordinate position in the frontier society.